This is the WBAI Listener Candidate Forum, a special presentation for you to ask questions to the people vying for seats on WBAI's local station board. I'm Renata Sago, the local election supervisor. Welcome to what's bound to be an exciting exchange about the future of this station. This year, we have 27 listener candidates running for 9 seats on the local station board. Yes, 27 listener candidates and 9 seats. Of those 27 candidates, 13 have chosen to participate in this special presentation. They'll be answering your questions live for the next 2 hours. We invite you to call in with your questions at 212-209-2877. That's 212-209-2877. First, we're going to start off with a special presentation from the candidates. Each person will have 1 minute to present a statement to you. Please note that all viewpoints presented are those of the participants and do not reflect the position of the Pacifica Foundation or WBAI or myself. The order of candidates has been randomized. The first person we'll hear from is John Hoffman. John, you have 1 minute to present your statement starting now.
Okay, thank you, Renata. Good afternoon. My name is John Hoffman. I'm a candidate for the WBAI local station board on the Indy slate. This is the first time I've ever run for the local station board. I grew up in New York and I live in Chicago today, but I travel to New York very frequently and I'll be able to attend most, if not all, in-person meetings. Here's a little bit about my background and the talents and abilities that I hope to offer. I've worked in finance, preparing budgets that are actionable and obtainable for large retail organizations for the last 20 years. I've served on the board of directors for my condo association for 4 years, 2 years as the secretary and 2 years as the chairman of the board. So I'm very familiar with working with different groups of people and different interests in order to get good results. I'm clearly aware of the amount of work that goes into a role like this, and I'm more than willing to help. I'm nearing the end of my work career, and I hope to leverage some of my experience specifically to help WBAI continue to build a successful financial foundation. I grew up listening to WBAI. It helped me to become a good adult, and I'm very passionate about the station.
Thank you so much, John. 1 minute completed for you. Next is going to be Serene Roberts. Serene, you have 1 minute starting now. Serene, you have 1 minute starting now. Okay. Okay, we see that you unmuted.
I thought we were told we were not going to be muted. We should just handle it ourselves.
Go ahead and speak. You have 1 minute starting now.
Thank you. I'm Serene Roberts with WBAI's Justice and Unity campaign and WBAI Fight Back, and a writer for Pacifica Fight Back. And I want to thank you all for preserving listener member democracy in Pacifica in the recent referendum. We're on a station made strong by Samori Marksman and Alambe Braff and others. And despite problems with programming processes at WBAI, I'm happy to be heard at this time, Saturdays at 4, where for a year and a half, people interested in the English-speaking Caribbean and its diaspora could hear Caribbean voices and beyond, and where we now hear news of Haiti, because whatever else we are, all New World Africans are Haitians. 3 quick notes. WBAI Tally volunteers should know that our friend Gerald Adams has transitioned. May the ancestors be pleased with him. The Brooklyn Caribbean Literature Festival is happening online this weekend, so please check it out. And tomorrow evening, you can hear from anti-racist LSB candidates around the country. Visit pacificafightback.org for more information. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Serene Roberts. Next is Katherine O'Sullivan. You have 1 minute, Katherine, starting now.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, Renata, for having this forum. My name is Katherine O'Sullivan, and I'm running as an independent candidate on the Indy slate. I come from Ireland, in case you didn't catch the accent. I've been in New York since '93, and I have been active in my community probably for the last I'm not sure how many years, 10 years at least. I am on my co-op board, treasurer. I do a little bookkeeping on the side, but my main focus is acting and performing. Let me see, I have been part of Inwood Legal Action, we fought successfully against an illegal and unjust rezoning in Inwood. However, it got overturned on appeal. I am against all systemic racism in all its forms. I fight for justice when I can.
Thank you so much, Katherine O'Sullivan. Our next candidate is Jim Dingman. You have 1 minute, Jim, starting now. Jim is.
Yeah,
okay.
there you go.
Wonderful.
Okay. Thank
1
you,
minute,
Renata.
starting now.
Right. My name is Jim Dingman. I urge all to vote for the Indy caucus candidates and myself. There's 2 points I want to raise. First of all, we're in the middle of getting or could get our Corporation for Public Broadcasting money back. And so that's one goal I want to have as a object of my service on the local station board. This is a situation which has cost us $400,000 to $500,000 a year, and this is something that we have to do. The second thing I want to emphasize is that the whole audience for the stations in general, and we're part of a system, the Pacifica radio system, has declined by about 75% in the past 20 years. So we have to change that. We have to alter that. And that's what I'm dedicated to do. So I want to thank you. It's great to be able to participate. And I want to urge all to vote for the Indy caucus in the voting, including myself. Thank you.
Jim Dingman, thank you so much. Our next candidate is Nicholudis. You have 1 minute, starting now.
Great, thank you. My name is Nicholudis. I'm an adjunct professor at CUNY, a rank and file organizer and active member in the PSC CUNY, a member of the Red Wave Collective, along with my fellow candidate Dylan Saba, who isn't here today, and a member of the Democratic Socialists of America. I believe in the power of community radio to inform and reflect the community's values and politics, and I'm running for the local station board to support the mission of WBAI, to give a voice to the community who supports it and to build a powerful network of listeners, supporters, and allies to keep WBAI publicly owned. And I'll bring new perspectives to the board and new ideas and my experiences as an organizer, synthesizing many different views to produce positive gains. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicholudis, for that candidate statement. Up next is Michael D.D. White. You have 1 minute, Michael.
Thank you. Yes, I'm Michael White, and I am running on the Indy slate. I'm running for my second 3-year term. I urge everyone to vote for all of the Indies on the Indy slate. People may know me as a co-founder of Citizens Defending Libraries, where we have fought for the open access to information, freedom from censorship. WBAI, 99.5 FM, radio for the 99.5%. With an audience that's 99.5% of the population that is not being served by the corporate media, we have huge opportunities to have a huge audience. They are not being served by the corporate narratives. The independent media is doing very well in many respects in serving that population. It's growing. We have to, but most of that's happening on the internet. We need to have people know that terrestrial radio backstops the internet.
Thank you, Michael White. Now our next candidate is Dean Loren. Dean, you have 1 minute, starting now.
Yes, my name is Dean Loren. You can reach me at deanloren@gmail.com. It's Dean like in a college, Loren like Sophia Loren, all one word, at gmail.com. And I also have a site on WordPress called deanlorenblog.com, all one word, deanlorenblog.com. And I'm running because of the merger and acquisition attack on Pacifica Foundation. And the current attack is based on a bankruptcy model using legal lawsuits to bleed the cash and force an FJC loan default. The FJC loan default will trigger a refinancing by the lender that is I would not say clean, and that will secure the loan with Pacifica Station's assets. FJC is the successor refinancer, could then seize control of Pacifica assets, of which I am against. And thank you.
Thank you so much, Dean Loren, for that candidate statement. Up next is Rachel Barr. Rachel, you have 1 minute, starting now. Rachel, go ahead and unmute yourself, starting now.
So sorry.
Thanks.
Hi all. Thank you for tuning into this listener forum. I'm running on the Justice and Unity slate, and I've been a listener to BAI for 46 years. I was a volunteer starting out at 505 8th Avenue, assisting with the morning show with Bernard White and Errol Maitland, and answering calls in the tally room. At 120 Wall Street, I started helping to produce the morning show and assisted with Cuba in Focus. I was also an employee. I produced radio at our beloved station for 10 years. I believe I would be a good LSB member due to my experience at BAI thus far. One of the key components for being an effective LSB member is to be able to get along with and work well with others who may differ in opinion. While we may not agree with each other, we are able to compromise and come to an agreeable solution. I've been involved in movement work for the past 40 years. I believe that everything is connected, and so on BAI, this is also true. I have many ideas for raising funds which will not cost the station anything. I'm also a grant writer and receive money for all the
Thank you so much, Rachel. You're listening to the Listener Candidate Forum here on 99.5 WBAI. Our next candidate is Eleanor Elizabeth Foreman. Eleanor, you have 1 minute, starting now. Go ahead and unmute yourself, Eleanor, if you can hear me.
Hi, I'm Eleanor Elizabeth Foreman, former WBAI unpaid staff member. I decided to run because I was concerned about the Visigoths who took over the station in October. I was an unpaid staff member when it was located at 8th Avenue, and then when it was located at Wall Street. I've been through everything from the newsroom, engineering through the opera glass, engineering for Bob Fass and Tom Whisker, who made me his peacenik co-host on the weaponry program. I'm currently a member of Pacifica Fight Back, WBAI Fight Back, and the Pacifica Democracy Project, all trying to keep WBAI and Pacifica true to their mission statement. And so shall I. I'm Eleanor Elizabeth Foreman, and I hope that you will vote for me.
Thank you, Eleanor Elizabeth Foreman. Next is Kaye Williams. You have 1 minute, Kaye, starting now.
Hi, I'm Kaye Williams. I've been a BAI listener since around early 1970s. I've been politically active since the 1960s. I was chair of a Free Speech Radio Alliance listeners group back in the 1980s. I'm familiar with a lot of the struggles at BAI. I just want to say, I think one thing, we're all basically left of center. And one thing the left is very good at doing is forming circular firing squads where we snipe at each other instead of clearly identify the enemy and the tasks at hand. I understand there's been a lot of water under the bridge. We need to come together and really try to put those differences aside and just logically figure out what needs to be done and just do it. And that's why I'm here. I don't fault anyone for wearing more than one hat, but I just wear the BAI hat.
Thank you so much, Kaye Williams. The next candidate is Matthew Reiss. Matthew, you have 1 minute, starting now.
Matthew Reiss here, R-E-I-S-S, author and educator. I cover the rackets, sham elections, lapsed democracies, news, sports, and weather. As a private investigator, we busted perps at America's premier class action law firm. As public investigator or journalist, we forced the party to refund millions to housing and block the construction of the world's largest incinerator in Williamsburg. I was in preschool in AOC's district when under 1% of America stopped the Vietnam War. Today, the media does not question authority. It falls exclusively to BAI. Fortunately, the BAI electorate may be the most capable political cadre this side of the border. God's private rainbow coalition. Vote independent and perhaps will inspire a wave of free speech.
Thank you so much, Matthew Reiss. Our next candidate is Ben Garron Kane. Ben, you have 1 minute starting now. Just unmute yourself, Ben, okay? I know you're on the phone, so unmute yourself. It's *6. Okay, so we're gonna actually move to Errol Maitland right now, the next candidate, while Ben sorts out his phone. Errol Maitland, you can go ahead and unmute yourself right now and begin your statement.
Sorry about that. Hi, my name is Errol Maitland, as you've been told, and some of you may associate me with programs such as Emanation, Wake Up Call, and Democracy Now!, to which I plead guilty. WBAI and the entire Pacifica network must be preserved and strengthened because it cannot be duplicated or replaced. We must invest in growth through partnership in order to press our message of peace and justice. This hurt needs us, and we need it. I am committed to ensuring that WBAI respects its listeners and operate under the management it deserves, and we become intergenerational again. Okay, please elect me again to the WBAI local board and vote for the other candidate listed at justiceunity.org. We'll work for you and with you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Errol Maitland. So Ben Garron Kane is a candidate. He was on the line. It looks like we're going to try to patch him in really quickly right now. Ben, are you here?
Yes, can you hear me?
Wonderful. You have 1 minute to say your statement, starting now.
Sure. My name is Ben, and I believe at the moment the station management is working tremendously hard to host high-quality programming. And the result is a pretty high-quality, diverse lineup of shows on global affairs, science, and civics. What we lack is listener members, as seen through the membership numbers, the lack of funds, and general apathy towards making WBAI a true community presence. I don't think it's a matter of technology, as we're a radio station, but a matter of keeping the promise that we represent the entire population of the tri-state region. And we present the best programming on science, health, the environment, and critical analysis of political, economic, and social problems. I think Linda Perry recently reported that we made the ratings, so things are good in that direction. And as a station board member, I'm going to work to ensure that LSB committees are working to address issues presented from station management and producers regarding any issues affecting their ability to produce programs on thought-provoking topics. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben Garron Kane. And there you have it. We've heard from all 13 candidates participating in today's Listener Candidate Forum. If you're interested in learning about all 27 candidates, you can find their detailed statements at elections.pacifica.org. This is the Listener Candidate Forum. I'm Renata Sago. Thank you for joining this conversation. We'll now begin the forum with questions from you and other listeners. If you have a question, the number to call is 212-209-2877. That's 212-209-2877. Or you can go online at WBAI.org. Our first question was actually submitted online, and here it is. Pacifica stations used to be known for independent journalism, but our reputation has declined badly. What do you understand of the original mission statement of Pacifica, and how does that relate to WBAI and what our purpose is now? We'll start with Serene Roberts, who's on the phone. Serene, unmute yourself, and as soon as you unmute yourself, you'll have 1 minute to speak. Okay, so we're gonna move on to the next candidate while she's unmuted. Wonderful.
This is Serene, but I have a question. Are we going to be muted consistently? Because we were told to mute on our devices.
Yes, you'll be muted. And thank you so much. This is a great question for listeners to know. We're muting all the candidates just to ensure that everyone can hear the candidate statements, their responses clearly. So I'm going to repeat the question, Serene, so you can answer it, and you'll have 1 minute as soon as I finish the question. Pacifica stations used to be known for independent journalism, but our reputation has declined badly. What do you understand, Serene, of the original mission statement of Pacifica? And how does that relate to WBAI and what our purpose is now? 1 minute starting now.
Okay, so I think part of the mission statement talks about arts and creativity of the community and bringing people in, teaching them, and allowing them to broadcast. The other part is having these difficult conversations about the things that cause conflict around the world in terms of race and creed and nationality, religion, etc. Part of the problem, I think, on BAI, you can see it if you listen to some of our fundraising, is that we've become pretty much a home marketing club for certain individuals and types of products. And I think that's a mistake. I also think there's a rejection of science. And I'm all for the alternative thinking. But some of the stuff we've been pushing, I think, is pretty bogus and pretty deadly. And I think there needs to be a check of how things are broadcast. What is broadcast? Bring in the other voice. Don't characterize it and condemn it while continuing to push your particular angle. Right? It's dialogue. It's sometimes disagreement.
But Serene, very good point. Dialogue and disagreement. Our next candidate, what is your answer, Katherine O'Sullivan?
Dialogue and disagreements. I agree. It's like we need to include all the voices that are out here. The corporate media has a very narrow narrative, and all radio stations, all media, all the corporate media, they've also lost listenership and readership of newspapers. So we are in the same boat, and we have to work on making good, compelling radio, following the original Pacifica guidelines, and get our listeners back, have this the place that they come to for truthful reporting. All of the reporting, all the different stories that you don't hear anywhere else except on WBAI. So that's, I would sort of say that we keep working on that. We have to make it a compelling radio station, and we can use whatever else is out there, the internet, but they should always be funneling listeners back to BAI.
Thank you, Katherine O'Sullivan. Jim Dingman, I know you're hearing what Katherine is saying, compelling reporting, independent journalism. What is your thought about the purpose of WBAI right now in Pacifica's mission? Jim, unmute yourself so we can hear what you have to say. Okay, so we're gonna move on to the next candidate while Jim unmutes himself. That's Nicholudis. Nicholudis, you have 1 minute to respond. Starting now.
Yeah, thank you. I think this is, it's important. Part of Pacifica's ideas is that it's community radio, right, through collaboration and interactivity, right? And I think that something that needs to be, built out through the future in our vision of moving the station forward is a building out of a larger listener democracy. So listening to what the community wants, what kind of shows they want to hear, and really having that interactive collaboration with listeners, right? And I think that other people are right that, corporate media offers a very narrow view of the world, right? And WBAI can expand that view, but it's important to expand that view towards the kinds of things and the kinds of shows that the community who supports the show, the station wants to hear and wants to be a part of.
Thanks, Nicholudis. So we're hearing some really important points here. Compelling reporting, collaboration. These are it sounds like what the legacy the candidates want for WBAI to be. Jim Dingman, I hear that you're off mute. So what are your thoughts? You have 1 minute starting now.
Well, this is a major problem in the station that has to be rectified. When we had the layoffs, we attrited the news department completely. And so I personally have argued for many years that we should be working with all the journalism schools in the tri-state area and bringing in people to essentially do the reporting. And the other issue is the Generation Z folks. They don't listen to radio. So that's important. We have to get them involved in order to let them do their thing and get involved in reporting. I'm talking about not only college students, I'm talking about high school students. Very important to change the demographics of who listens to the station.
Thank you, Jim. So he's talking about completely looking, forward thinking, bringing younger voices in. What do you think, Michael D.D. White? What should the priority be for WBAI? 1 minute starting now.
Yes, obviously. I agree with Katherine. Compelling journalism. Our mission is to provide alternatives to what the ownership and corporate interests want us to hear. And telling people, addressing the issues. There are so many big issues, all of the big issues that public tends to agree on. Medicare for all, reducing, dealing with the banks, reducing military spending, getting out of all of these endless wars. We live in an environment where the air around us is the corporate media telling us these narratives all the time. We can distinguish ourselves and be compelling with a media literate approach that keeps referring to how we are different from that and how we are giving good information versus all of the bad information and bad narrative and false equations that are just surrounding us.
Thank you so much, Michael D.D. White. I mean, we've got a lot of perspectives here and so much more to share. And it looks like we've got listeners on the line right now, 4 listeners. So what we're going to do is we're going to patch in these listeners so that we could at least hear their questions, and then we'll continue on with the conversation, because this is a listener candidate forum and we want to make sure we have those voices.
All right, caller, please tell us your name, where you're calling from, and what is your question for these candidates. Caller. Okay, let's go for the next caller. All right, caller, please tell us your name, where you're calling from, and what your question is for these candidates.
Yes, aloha, greetings to the beloved community. This is my ad calling from the cave. Something I want to share first, that Monday morning, guest host Richard Sarrett of Coast to Coast AM is having some Dr. Judy Wood, S.K. Bain, which is something I contributed, The Most Dangerous Book in the World, 9/11 is Mass Ritual, and Daniel Chandler. So everybody tune in for that program. But my question to the candidates has to do with, I'm going to put it like this. I'm going to briefly relate some recent history. And my question would be, how would you avoid this situation in the future, and how would you actually have sensitivity and protection toward people who are trying to solve problems and resolve conflicts? So recently—
That's a really good point. And you know what, I think that, let's touch upon that. That's a really good, powerful question. Resolving conflict. This is Pacifica Network, WBAI. So we're gonna take that thought and we're gonna hold it. We're gonna move to the next listener to see what other questions people have, and then have the candidates address that thought right there. Conflict resolution, how that manifests itself on air. Who's our next listener?
All right, caller, please tell us your name, where you're calling from, and what your question is.
Hello, am I on the air?
Yes, that is you.
Great. So my name is Judy Gorman, and connected to what the last questioner asked is I've attended the LSB meetings for about a year now, and my question is, can the candidates please tell me whether they believe justice and unity candidates attacking listener-elected LSB members is productive or constructive for any of us, and do you consider it is right for these candidates to publicly tell elected board members to absent themselves from WBAI and stop representing the listeners who elected them, including when that means turning the LSB over to candidates who've said they want to hand WBA over to Time Warner, MNN Manhattan? Thank you very much.
Thank you for that question. So we're talking about, sounds like a lot going on here, conflict resolution, asset sales. Who's our next listener? Let's get this one more question in.
All right, caller, you're on the air. Please tell us your name, where you're calling from, and what your question is for the candidates.
Yeah, this is Atal from Adele.
BAI and Pacifica has laws, and those laws are the bylaws. Are the candidates even aware? Did they even read the bylaws once? Are they going to follow the bylaws? Because they have a fiduciary duty, a legal duty to follow the rules and the laws. And fiduciary duty can be broken. It's a legal matter. So will they follow the bylaws and also broadcasting laws and nonprofit laws?
Thank you so much. And I believe we had one more listener, was there, who had called in? Is there one more question? Okay. So everything that's been said so far sort of still ties into our initial question. So we're gonna, continue to have people answer those questions right there. So we'll move forward. So we've got some themes: conflict resolution. Are attacks okay? Do people even know the bylaws? Do people even know the very structure that governs the local station board? I'm going to turn this conversation over to our next candidate, who is Dean Loren. Dean Loren, what are your thoughts about the purpose of WBAI as it relates to Pacifica and its mission, factoring in all of these themes that listeners have just brought up? Dean, you have 1 minute starting now.
The original mission was local programming at WBAI. Let's just focus on New York. And the independent journalism of New York City. The attack on Pacifica, the main goal is to centralize a national signal feed over the satellite to usurp the local programmers. And we see that because the conflict resolution, the justice and unity, everybody wants a piece of that pie that comes with that nationalization attack of the signal, which we see through Time Warner and MNN, which already do that type of satellite feed. So they are already in the process of having their local programming usurped. And of course, if we did follow the bylaws, if the board adhered to the bylaws, we would be able to defend against this attack for a naturalization of the central feed, which some people are referred to as like the NPRization of Pacifica Radio, meaning you.
Dean, thank you so much. So you're listening right now to the WBAI Listener Candidate Forum. It's a special presentation for you to ask questions to the people vying for seats on WBAI's local station board. The number for you to call with a question is 212-209-2877. Here is Pacifica stations used to be known for independent journalism, but our reputation has declined badly. We're hearing from listeners, they're talking about attacks. Do people even know the bylaws, conflict resolution, what's going on? How does all of this relate to WBAI and what the purpose is now? Our next candidate is Rachel Barr. You have 1 minute to answer the question, starting now.
Thank you. As to attacks, I'm in the JNU slate. I just got on it about 2 weeks ago, I think, in terms of remembering the time frame. To answer Judy Gorman's issue or question, or however you want to frame it, if there any attacks against JNU, which happened before I got on the slate, I heard about, and to be honest with you, I think they're unfounded, and I don't think that certainly JNU has been attacking any other slate, whether it was the Independents or any other slate. And as for the bylaws, yes, we all know there are bylaws. I was in those many meetings of forming the bylaws and voting on the bylaws and saying exactly what those bylaws are currently. And I think just like the United States Constitution, if you will, some of the bylaws that we're currently working.
Thank you, Rachel. So, I mean, we've got someone who's participated in the shaping of the bylaws. There was a recent vote about the bylaws. We've got new people coming in who want to be on the board, new people like Eleanor Elizabeth Foreman, who's up next. What are your thoughts, Eleanor? You've got 1 minute starting now.
I have certainly read the bylaws, and it was my concern about changing them and taking democracy out of Pacifica that first inspired me to run. I wanted to make sure that the New Day Visigoths did not win their bylaw election. As for conflict resolution, I believe that people should not be making personal attacks on the air. People can talk about the issues. People can talk about their disagreements with other people when the other person is there, able to respond. It is, of course, not appropriate to tell local station board members not to show up to their own meetings. That goes without saying. And I'm Eleanor Elizabeth Foreman. My time is running out.
Thank you. So we've got a lot going on here. One thing we could probably all agree upon is that the beauty of WBAI is that it attracts such a diverse listenership. You know, people from all over New York City and also across the country. Our next candidate is actually not physically located in New York City. Kaye Williams, what are your thoughts here about WBAI's mission as it relates to the larger Pacifica mission? You have 1 minute starting now.
Well, first of all, yes, I don't live in New York City proper. I'm part of the New York diaspora, people who left because it was unaffordable. But I actually don't think BAI programming is so bad as far as quality. I think the difference between what we hear on BAI and what we hear on NPR is about as great as the difference what we hear on NPR and what we hear in the major media. That's why it's so precious and so important to perpetuate. I'm a retired PA. I've worked in intensive care. And when you have a patient on life support, you make small changes a little in a positive direction. You don't do radical things that just sweep this group away or that group away or enforce your particular favorite policy. I think we need to listen to each other. We need to have meetings where we really do try to listen to each other and evaluate things based on current situations on the ground.
Thank you so much, Kaye Williams. And it sounds like we've got people calling in. Thank you so much. This is the Listener Candidate Forum. The number to call in with your question is 212-209-2877. Continuing with this conversation though, our next candidate, Matthew Reiss, what are your thoughts about what people are saying here? You have 1 minute starting now. Take yourself off mute though. Okay, we'll get you off mute. Unmute, boom. Okay. Go ahead, starting now, 1 minute.
I like the question about independent journalism. I'm a reporter and I've taught journalism at Rutgers and the City University for years. There's a term we use in journalism called media literacy. The content that we can't just reread the New York Times to our listeners and be doing them a service. We have to actually check to determine whether the content is of any value at all. And it's not that hard to refute quite a large percentage of the headlines in the New York Times where I used to work. In fact, if you look really hard, there's not a lot of media literate content in the United States. People have to go out and create and ask the questions and provide the answers. That's what's going to bring listeners to this station to provide something new.
Thank you so much, Matthew Reiss. He's talking about media literacy. So Ben Garron Kane, who is on the phone, is up next, and just want to give you the time to unmute yourself to hear your thoughts, Ben Garron Kane. What do you think? Starting now, 1 minute.
Yeah, sure. The third paragraph of the Pacifica Foundation mission statement is to establish in radio broadcasting operations to encourage and provide outlets for the creative skills and energies of the community, conduct classes and workshops in the writing and production of drama, to establish awards and scholarships for creative writing, to offer performance facilities to amateur instrumentalists, choral groups, orchestral groups, and music students, and to promote and aid other creative activities which will serve the cultural welfare of the community. I think WBAI is doing a good job right now with its news, the 6 o'clock news, the GBE, the economic update with Rick Wolf. I think these are accurate, non-corporate sources of information. I think, as the mission statement says, we just need to keep an ear to the ground. We need to keep things local, try to bring more local news and local journalism into the show, and that's how we emphasize that we're non-corporate, independent journalism.
Okay, all right. So we got some different stances here. One person is saying we need more media literacy. We need more emphasis on independent journalism. Someone else is saying, hey, I think we're doing pretty fine. We could do better. Errol Maitland, you're the next candidate. What do you think? You have 1 minute starting now. Just make sure to unmute yourself.
First, I have to unmute myself. You know, I have a lot to say. First of all, in 1 minute, first of all, I am a pacifist. I am not a pacifist. So if you're going to throw rocks at me, believe me, I'm going to defend myself, as I have a right to. There's 180 hours in a week, and we would like to have different voices in that hour. Because something sounds good doesn't mean it's always accurate or it's true. And I think truth is one of the things that WBAI needs to look out for. And in terms of the corporate media, 50 years today is Attica. And people call me at 6:30 in the morning to tell me, why is it the WNYC is covering Attica and BAI isn't? We need to get back to dealing with issues that affect people and their lives, not just selling snake oil. By the way, snake oil is good for you.
Oh, okay. Okay, so now we're gonna head on to the last candidate for this question, and we thank you, our 3 callers on the line. We will be getting to you momentarily. John Hoffman, how do you wrap up everything here that's been said? 1 minute starting now.
Thank you, Renata. I appreciate it. Getting back to the original question and the intent of the original question, I will acknowledge that some of the programming on WBAI I am not particularly proud of, and the commercial stance that some of it takes, right? I think in large measure that's due to the financial stress that the station is experiencing on a daily basis. And so in order to improve the quality of programming, I think there's a 3-prong or multi-prong approach. One is to make sure that the station's financially viable, and I've kind of spoken about that previously, and other people have spoken about it as well. Hopefully from there, the overall quality of all the programming improves, and that grows listenership, right? And that would be kind of my stance on that. The other questions people asked, I'm going to answer based on my experience being in previous boards, because they're all kind of similar questions no matter what board you've been on. Resolving conflicts, everyone here is here for very much the same reason, to make the station improve, and we all have a common ground.
All right, common ground. What a phrase to end on, common ground. Well, our listeners have been waiting. They have more questions they want to ask.
I'm sorry. Hello.
Hi, Serene.
I didn't get to address those 3 questions.
We're on our first question actually, and we're 45 minutes in. I believe you answered. I think you answered. But what we could do is
I think you've lost track. There were 3 questions about conflict resolution, the bylaws, and attacks. And I have not had a chance to speak on that.
You had a chance to speak once, and everyone has now had a chance to speak once. And so in the spirit of democracy, we have to move on to our next listeners. This is a listener.
We can move on. I know that I wasn't called on for any of those 3 questions.
Everyone has spoken once so far. So let's take the listeners now. And if we have extra time, we'll let people address more of the issues. Thank you.
All right, caller, you're on the air. Please tell us your name and where you are calling from, and what is your question?
My name is Dee Dee Halleck, and as an unsuccessful litigant at the U.S. Supreme Court against Manhattan Neighborhood Network and their completely illegal use of public funds to make to censor opinions. I would like to know what every candidate, what their position is in terms of allowing M&N to take over the FCC lease of the airwaves. Are they for it or against it?
Okay, thank you for that question. Let's take a couple more questions so that people can respond at once.
Okay, caller, please tell us your name, where you're calling from, and what is your question for our candidates.
I'll get right to the question. My question concerns the appearance on BAI Airways of Jack of the Gray Panthers, August 17th. Please see the audio. And when a listener called in and essentially brought the cat out of the bag, the response of management was to, without survey, without feedback, without moving that beloved program to more talkback, which used to be the flagship of the station, they shut it down. And so my question is, why can we never deal with the cat out of the bag? Although BAI wasn't mentioned to that cat, it was put together, and there's never any resolution of these issues of impropriety, fraud, plagiarism et al. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Do we have one more listener question?
Yes, we
Okay.
do. All right,
All
caller,
right.
please tell us your name, where you are calling from, and what is your question.
Hi, Zab. I'm Zabby, and I am have a website called savewbai.webs.com, and you can see and hear. Well, you can read what I have commented throughout the years, and I am an accountant, and I am very concerned with the money situation. And my question would be to Dean Loren and also to Jim Dingman, because they were the only two that really brought up some things about the money situation. And without money, everything else is a moot point, really. All the questions, all the enthusiasm, money. It's about getting money. And also, I have figured to get us clean and solvent in 1 year's time, it would take $250 per half-hour program. And I just heard Gary brag that he had gotten $83,000, had raised $83,000. Well, he's short $43,000 because 5 hours a week, that's $130,000 a year. And so he is short, and people should be billed at the end of the week for their programs if they can't raise the money. And we should have the bronze buddy, the silver buddy, the gold buddy, and the platinum buddy.
Okay, what a plan here. We're going to ask the candidates what their plan is. Thank you so much, listener. So as we move into this next round, we're actually going to give the candidates 2 minutes to respond. During your 2-minute response, you can address some of the questions that came up in the last round. For the time being, these are the questions that we have so far. What are your thoughts on the FCC lease? What are your thoughts on accusations of fraud at WBAI? And also, what is your plan to bring more money to the station to support programming? We're going to start this round with Katherine O'Sullivan. You have 2 minutes, Katherine.
Okay, great. Thank you, Renata. Yes, Katherine, like Katherine the Great. Yes, well, let's talk about the money first. I think maybe brass, silver, gold buddies might be something to investigate for sure. But as we have maybe not heard in this program, but I believe that our audits have been completed in a timely fashion, and therefore we are eligible to get our public broadcasting funds. So we need to pursue that. That would make a lot of sense. And yes, you can do nothing without any money. You can do an awful lot with very little money, but you can do nothing with no money. So the money is very important. I am treasurer on a couple of boards, and I do a bit of bookkeeping in my side job. So I understand money and the need for getting it. Let's see. I believe in our bylaws, as one of our other candidates said. A lot of work goes into forming bylaws, so they need to be upheld. I voted against changing the bylaws. Let's see now. The FCC lease and asset sales. I am opposed to any sale or lease of the BAI's FCC lease to Time Warner, also with their subsidiary Manhattan Neighborhood Network. So I'm completely opposed to that. We have to keep our independence. That's why I'm running with the indie slate. I want to maintain WBAI's independence. And as for resolving conflicts, well, I too serve on some boards. There can be very disruptive and difficult personalities, and all you can do is really listen, and then, get consensus or majority to decide the action to take. Thank you.
That was Katherine Sullivan, one of the 13 listener candidates participating in this listener candidate forum. If you're listening right now and you have a question, pick up the phone and dial 212-209-2877, 212-209-2877. Our next candidate that we'll hear from is Jim Dingman. Jim Dingman, you have 1 minute to respond to all of these questions here, starting now. Excuse me, 2 minutes, starting now.
Okay, 2 minutes. Well, first of all, I'm completely opposed to the turning over of BAI signal in a public service operating agreement to MNN. I'm 100% against that. I am in favor of BAI cooperating with all the cable access TV stations in the tri-state area, and I'm always in favor of that. Now, the money issue is the most thorny part. I personally think that the collapse of the fiscal supports of the stations, which has been going on for 20 years, this is the source of a lot of the problems. In New York, we only have about, on average, 1/400th of 1% of the metro audience listening to BAI on average. And some stations have like 10/400ths of 1%. That has to change. We have to figure out a way to change that. Now, the issue of Gary Nolan, everybody on this call, some people have been involved in these kind of decisions for years. And, Gary had 17,000 people per hour at his peak listening to his show. That frankly explains the longevity of the support he has. And I've never seen a effort to come up with a solution that indeed will create public affairs shows that have 17,000 people an hour listening. So until that happens, people can complain all they want, but that is the fact. And finally, on the issue of my raises, I do think people's complaints have to be taken seriously. I know that when I was chair of the Community Advisory Board, I handled 2,000 premium complaints and resolved them successfully. And the last point is on the issue of the LSB meetings. The LSB meetings can sometimes, as one former program director put it, they can be the best free off Broadway show in the city that particular day. So one just has to put up with, drama and soap opera, et cetera, in those meetings. One just has to keep focused in on what's important, and that is to resolve the situation for the stations and for the network.
Dingman, thank you. Thank you so much for that perspective. Our next candidate to answer several questions that have been asked, including questions of fraud and how to raise money for WBAI, is Nicholudis. Nick, you have 2 minutes, starting now.
Thanks, and thanks to the listeners calling in with these questions. So there's a lot of questions there, and kind of want to address 2 of them. Firstly, this issue of the conflict stuff. Now, admittedly, I'm new to this, and I think that you can hear in the kinds of questions that are being asked that there are deep kind of, for lack of a better word, political divides in the board. And I'm interested to come onto the board to see how we can bridge these kinds of divides, and find kind of grievance processes to work through these kinds of issues, because I want to work to make a radio station that doesn't just work for the listeners, but works for the people who put their time and sweat and effort, the producers, the staff, both paid and unpaid, the board members. And so coming into this as a new person, as a younger person, I feel that, I can bring through my organizing work and experience, figuring out ways to kind of bridge these kinds of divides and find solutions to move through them. And next, I want to talk about the money, right? Money is obviously always an issue for independent public radio, right? And I think that we solve this issue. And also, I am full stop against any sale of WBAI. And if I'm on the board, I will never, ever, ever let anything from BAI be sold. And I think that we build money and we get money and we make WBAI sustainable in the long run through building roots in our community by creating a large group of listeners, supporters, allies who support the station, not just by listening, but by supporting it financially, right? And we do this by creating programs that reflect the community's values.
Thanks, Nicholudis. All right, reflecting the community's values. Our next candidate with 2 minutes is Michael D. White. Starting now.
Thank you. So collaborations can be wonderful, especially if you rotate through various of them. The Louis Armstrong Museum, Jalopy Theater in Brooklyn, maybe Brick Arcs Media. But the idea of turning WBAI over on a lease basis, lock, stock, and barrel, to Time Warner, MNN, Manhattan, and lose all listener accountability, and therefore the reliability of WBAI to even continue, is something I'm absolutely opposed to. Going back to another thing, problems without solutions are fatiguing. They're enervating. It's causes people to stop taking action. It sidelines activists. What we need is people who have the skills to identify what's positive in order to build on the positive and make things happen. Now, in terms of conflicts and getting along, it's a question of recognizing common interests and the fact that we've got a big tent. They're basically the big questions we agree on, and we need to build on that. And that's basically what the indie slate is. We have a lot of variety of thinking on the indie slate, but it's a big tent where we all agree on the common interests. And this is the way to get over conflicts. So we're very good at thinking different things within this indie caucus, but still working together for the greater good.
Okay, yeah. So no one wants, I'm just got a comment saying no one wants WBAI to sell out. WBAI brought to you by Coca-Cola. No one wants that. Dean Loren, what do you think? 2 minutes, Dean Loren, starting now.
Yes, if you want to contact me, deanloren@gmail.com, as well as I'm putting up a blog, deanlorenblog.com. I actually was Loren v. New York City and MNN was the sister case to Halleck v. MNN. And the judges freaked when I dropped the entire history of the takeover in my complaint. And they had me falsely arrested by Blackwater police masquerading as federal officers. And I was able to prove that in court. But what we're looking at here is, in this corporate takeover is, of course, the centralization of our signal through a main satellite feed. Now, the issue of fraud, of course, you had Clancy do at KPFA 2 illegal transfers to pay for lawyers when WBA was shut down. He billed them as loans. The entire audits, by the way, are bogus because they are not reporting the real irregularities that are being done with the lawsuits involved. So once that's exposed, a lot of this financial drain will go away. And, you know, to speak with more to the centralization of our satellite feed, that is the goal. And the way to reach the goal in this merger and acquisition attack is to all these nuisance lawsuits to drain through the legals, lawsuits, the hiring of attorneys. And we see that over and over again. And I brought this up to Arthur Schwartz. You know, they did not even bring up that in Crozier v. For the bylaws in 2019, that Bill Crozier filed his complaint to get the bylaws voted on as secretary.
Dean Loren, thank you. You're listening to the WBAI Listener Candidate Forum. This is a special presentation for you listeners to ask questions to the people vying for seats on WBAI's local station board. The number to call with your question is 212-209-2877. 212-209-2877. So our listener candidates are answering some questions about the FCC lease, accusations of fraud at WBAI. How do you even bring money into this station to support independent journalism? Our next candidate to answer these questions is Rachel Barr. Rachel, you have 2 minutes to respond. Starting now.
Thank you. So in reference to my issue of the date and the time, August 17th, I'm going to go back into the archives and try to find the program she was speaking about and find out what that was all about. Years ago, I don't know how many of my fellow candidates have been listening to BAI, but years ago, there was an unpaid staff union form that was formed to take care of issues that would have probably gone to mediation if staff paid for the paid staff, the unpaid staff who were not members of the union, which the paid staff are in. And we would like to see that reinstated, if you will. We think that's very important. And as for M&N, the person who runs M&M used to work at BAI, and he worked with Amy in Democracy Now! I don't know how many of you on the screen or on your phone know that. I never assume people know anything or everything, I should say. And I think there was a tremendous misunderstanding because that wasn't going to be a takeover, as it were. That was going to be a partnership, and it would have afforded BAI. I'm not interested in selling BAI at all. Let me be very, very clear and not misunderstood. That was going to be a partnership, and in which BAI could have had video availability. And as for money, yes, I learned from a former program director that it is the main job of an LSB to raise money for the station. And I had asked a fellow candidate, how much money this currently seated LSB had raised since it was seated, and I never got a response. And I asked several of the candidates who are now seated on the LSB, and no one has ever answered that question. So I'm curious as to that.
Was that the wine glass? Okay, we heard the wine glass. I'm sorry, Rachel, we have to wrap up and move on to our next candidate. Thank you for your perspective.
There's a solution to every problem.
Eleanor Elizabeth Foreman, you have 2 minutes to start.
Come on.
Right now.
Given that there are only 168 hours in the week, it would be nice to have an extra half a day, but alas, there is not. We need to reach out with a greater variety of programming in order to get more listeners. We've tapped out many of our listeners and exhausted the old model of on-air marathon fund drives. We could also monetize alternative means of distributing content, including podcasting, YouTube videos, and other platforms. Our on-air fundraising needs to emphasize the unique value and community service we provide. I believe we're already also reaching out to former members to ask why they've stopped being members, what we can do to make it right. So hopefully we can do a better job of fundraising. Our financial problems started because of the extortionate Empire State Realty Trust contract we were bound to after 9/11, creating a disastrous debt that's been refinanced and is being in the process of, hopefully, of being retired with the help of bequests. But we need our support base, our audience has shrunk. We have to identify and engage with communities, artists, and activists who will help rebuild and expand that base. I'm glad that we got our audits up to date so that we can get Corporation for Public Broadcasting money, but we cannot count on Foundation.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Eleanor Elizabeth Foreman. So we have more listeners on the line, and they are coming with more questions. So we're going to take one more candidate, and then we're going to go to the listeners, and then we'll give two people, time to respond to those additional questions as well. Kaye Williams, you're up next with 2 minutes.
Okay, well, I think there's been a lot of great ideas presented by the candidates. Let me start with fundraising. We need to improve on-air fundraising. That can be done through improving quality of programs. We need to hit the hot button issues of the day, local as well as what people are concerned about, democracy, the environment. We also need to, it's just been said, to remind producers to, plug BAI buddies more often. I don't think producers, who especially most of them unpaid, should be charged or billed if they don't meet certain donation goals. I think they just need to try. And I think we need to explore off-air fundraisers, grassroots fundraising, street fairs, craft fairs, book signings, and maybe more billboards, flyers, bumper stickers, all these ideas. Grant writing for CPB, of course, is crucial. Also, bus and subway ad campaigns. That would a lot of people ride the public transportation in New York. We also need to we've all one way or the other said we need the listenership and fundraising are connected. When we increase listeners, we increase revenue, and vice versa. So we need to think about all the ways we need to reach out for new listeners, increase our internet presence, podcasts, social media, and also through journalism schools, through high school and college classes, get kids into radio by giving them, a microphone and let them go around and talk to people in the street and put it on the air. As far as the
Thank you so much, MK.
Okay.
Thank you. I think that was our time's up. So right now we're going to take a quick break, and we're going to go to some listeners to hear what questions they have as we sort of continue to answer all of these bigger questions about the future of WBAI.
All right, caller, you are now on the air. Please tell us your name, where you're calling from, and what your question is for our candidates.
Good afternoon. My name is Rose. I live in Flemington, New Jersey, and I have noticed in the last couple of years that the senior citizen and disabled community have been basically thrown under the bus. It's very upsetting when you are expecting some kind of show, and because you're not on the web or you're blind or whatever reason, you're not able to find out what's coming on, and there's somebody on there hustling collagen cream, cleaning supplies, gurus, but the amount of time that is spent on this, it's pounding, pounding, pounding. I don't know whether or not people have thought through the fact that many people who are disabled or elderly are on a fixed income, and it isn't necessarily less than what other people are going through right now. We can count on our money. We have homes, we have all kinds of federal benefits, so we know what we can spend. But when I have to hear about the wonders of the collagen cream and how beautiful my skin is, I mean, it's like a little much. The other really thing that bugged me was the MGM movie reviews given by a gentleman who's managed to wedge himself into 2 time slots. Quite condescending to a female co-hostess. There are things that are going on that, you've just thrown this whole group of people, you pushed people away.
Rose, thank you so much for your perspective. Thank you for that. So we're going to have the candidates respond to that commentary. But first, let's hear from our next caller.
All right, caller, you're now on the air. Please tell us your name and where you are calling from and what question you have for our candidates.
Thank you. My
You're
name
welcome.
L from Long Island. Under the heading of transparency, honesty, truth, and accountability, auditing, programs whose programmers, that is, who are members of one or more committee and are paid employees and are able to either engineer or have some controlling factor on a show, what would the candidate do to either prevent this person or persons from ignoring the listeners who call in on a continuous basis? Also, the station manager evaluation, if that is done once a year or more, what would you do to ensure that without fail each year it is done? If not, it would result in termination or suspension. Is it necessary?
Thank you so much. We're gonna.
For those committees.
These are multiple questions, and I thank you for the 2 questions you've asked so far. We're going to move to our next listeners because we want to get their voices heard as well. So thank you so much. We'll make sure the candidates answer one of your 2 questions. Thank you. Our next listener, please.
All right, caller, you are on the air. Please tell us your name, where you're calling from, and what your question is for our candidates. Caller, you're on the air.
Hi. Oh, I'm so sorry. Excuse me. My name is Denise, calling from Brooklyn. Just making a statement. What do you think active participation or collaboration with the listener has declined during on-air programming of late, when this is what made us so successful originally and set us apart from other radio stations? If you become a board member, how will you support and maximize the collaboration between the station and the listeners during on-air programs? Thank you.
Thank you so much. So we've got some questions. They're all related to programming. As we move into the continuation of answering the questions, let's factor these questions in. What programming are you creating specifically geared toward people with disabilities? How are you encouraging or plan to encourage collaboration in programming, and also evaluate the people who are bringing programs to WBAI's air? Our next candidate we'll hear from is Matthew Reiss. You have 2 minutes to respond. Matthew Reiss, are you here on the line with us? Okay, we're gonna move to our next candidate while Matthew gets sorted out. Oh, I think this is Matthew here. Matthew, hello? Okay,
Hello,
we'll move.
Can you hear me?
Yes, you are heard. You have 2 minutes to respond.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. I just got bounced off the air for about 20 minutes, but in any case, we're talking about a number. There about 6 or 7 questions have been raised since I was bounced off the Zoom. Basically, the most important topic, the overriding topic, is keeping a wavelength, keeping the people who make up this listenership and the staff and the hosts to ensure that these people continue to have an access to the public. I suggest that we all get together. I mean, we have to get together. We have to cooperate as many of us as possible to try to establish a second signal, because eventually one of these judges from one of these lawsuits is going to turn off this signal. I mean, it's going to happen. I hope it doesn't. We'll fight against it, but we need a second signal so that the family, who includes the listeners and the hosts and the staff, can continue to do this. My suggestion that I put forth in the past was let's gather together and sit down and execute something so that we have a backup signal. Are you still with me?
Yes, we're still here with you. Yeah.
Okay. Renata, other than this rather important area, is there something else that I could speak on that you?
Well, we've still got these questions about conflict resolution, fraud, the bylaws. These are still questions that remain. How you would plan to?
Well, the bylaws. Let me just choose one of these. The network is called Pacifica. That means anti-war in English. This network shut down the war, the government, the Vietnam War, the corporations back a while ago in the 60s when we had 500,000
Thank
listeners.
you, Matthew. Thank you so much.
We could do it again. We could do it again.
All right, so we've got a lot of topics here to address. So far, listeners have called in, they've asked about the FCC lease, accusations of fraud at the station. How do you even plan to bring money in the station? Our latest callers have asked about programming. How are we evaluating programmers on WBAI, and how are we making sure that the programs speak to people with disabilities and also encourage collaboration? Our next candidate to answer this question is Ben Garron Kane. You have 2 minutes, Ben. We just need to get you off mute. All right, here we go.
Yeah, thanks. I'm glad she called, because I think that's exactly the type of show that we could use on WBAI from a constituency that's not represented anywhere else. And one of the ironies, I think, of WBAI currently is the fact that some of our, according to the station manager, some of the highest grossing programs are exactly the ones she was complaining about. The ones that are offering skin cures or bacterial soaps. So I think it's critical as a board member that you focus on programming and that you're cultivating the next generation of hosts who will be able to attract audiences, because I don't know any other way to bolster the funding situation of a listener-supported radio other than attracting new members and getting them to become paid members. And I also didn't speak on this, but I do also oppose the any type of public sharing agreement between WBAI and any Time Warner owned entity. I oppose that 100%.
And Garron Kane, thank you so much. So our next candidate with the response is Errol Maitland. Errol Maitland, you have 2 minutes starting now.
Yeah, first of all, Time Warner doesn't even exist any longer. And Don Coughlin, who is at M&M, I think he's still there, was at one time the ED at Pacifica, and he was one of the people who led the anti-takeover move of Pacifica back in the 90s, early 2000. Somebody right now who a lot of people behind came into WBAI with the intent of going to the Empire State Building and locking down a retransmitter. The last takeover was the third attempt in my memory of some outsider from California or with the National coming in to take over our station. That person's name is Grace Aaron today, who is a major player in the Pacifica fight back. I can remember someone at one time, and I think it was me, who said that they wanted to take Pacifica back to its lily white origin in Berkeley. And what's happening in BAI is that the people who were raising the money, the programs that were raising the money were the programs that were taken off the air. And this argument about stealing money is the same canard that was used. Auditing and managing the books will stop that from happening. Our local station board doesn't work. It meets and someone says it's a great off-Broadway show. It has no responsibility towards managing the station, towards raising funds. I used to put my $2 on the table when I came to a board meeting because I thought that was one of the responsibilities that we have. We did a general manager's evaluation. The board has not acted on it. And I think if we have to clean house, that's what we have to do. When I was on
I don't believe any of this is accurate at all.
When I was on the station, well, that's why we have history. When I was on the station,
Thank you, Errol Maitland.
I took my own program off the air.
Errol Maitland.
The best interest of the station.
Almost all
Errol
of that
Maitland.
was false.
Okay, ding, ding, ding. Okay, we've heard the wine glass. We're gonna ask you to respect the rules here. And Matthew Reiss, you had your turn and you'll have another one. Our next candidate here is John Hoffman. John, you have 2 minutes to respond to what's happening here.
Okay, thank you. First of all, I'm going to try and group my comments according to the questions. I am 100% in favor of an independent WBAI. I will reject any sharing agreements or anything that makes it less than 100% independent. That's the major reason why I'm a candidate for the board. Second grouping of topics, accountabilities of board members. Amongst the things that we've talked about, being able to understand the bylaws, the operating procedures, nonprofit procedures, making sure that audits are done on time, I consider to be the price of admission to be on a board. Those are things that should be taken seriously and are the day-to-day mission of the board, including any questions or complaints about programming, which should be taken seriously. In terms of my third grouping, then will be kind of where Rose's question and Denise's question about programming and appealing to a different audience and or fundraising, things like that, right? So the things that I would look to accomplish is to make all programming as relevant as possible to a constituency. It doesn't necessarily have to be the largest constituency, but a constituency that is loyal and will be there for that programming. And I kind of enjoyed Denise's comments about interactive programming as well, right? Because that helps build engagement of the audience. So the quality of programming, the engagement of the audience, I believe will result in a better fundraising effort or better donation efforts. I also believe that it is the duty of the board to take fundraising seriously, planning events, going in different directions to make sure that the financial stability of the station remains intact. Thanks.
Thank you, John Hoffman. And our next candidate and final candidate for this round of questions is Serene Roberts. Serene, you have 2 minutes to respond.
So I'll begin by noting that when Matthew Reiss interrupted Errol, the moderator yelled at Errol. And that this is only the second time that I'm being allowed to speak when I think other people have spoken 3. So I know the order we're supposed to be going in and it's not happening. I will say to Denise, great to hear your voice. Please email me through justiceunity.org. You can email me at info@justiceunity.org. I've been hearing you and I want to share something with you. There are no Asian programs on WBAI. There are no Asian programmers as far as I know. We're in New York City. There's no programming for the English-speaking Caribbean. There are no programs dealing with the Middle East. There are no programs dealing with Palestine in particular. There are no Arab programming on WBAI. There's no programming for elderly people, which is where most of WBAI's staff are. There's no programming with regard to disability. We've had the same person as interim program director for 3 years. These things should have been rectified. I know the bylaws extremely well. I worked on them, and I know that the board, the local station board, has responsibilities. And chief among those responsibilities is ensuring that there is a transparent, respectful, collaborative process for program changes and evaluations. Has not happened. The GM is not making sure it happens. As to the GM evaluation, went through this huge process, evaluated in 2016. Some people were playing boycott, didn't come to meetings. The evaluation could not be acted on. So they finally got around to evaluating him some 3 years later, sent it to national. There's no responsibility on the part of anyone in national to act unless there's disagreement between an LSB and the executive director about firing someone or not. There's no such issue. There's no compulsion to act. The
Thank you,
LSB needs to
Serene.
make
Thank you
the
so
GM
much. Thank you for your
comply.
response. So I just want to interject, well, not interject because your time is up, and just state that so far everyone has spoken twice. We've had many new listeners calling in. This is a listener candidate forum, so we just want to make sure listeners have an opportunity to ask their questions. In the next round, you'll all have the opportunity to address what has been raised so far. So with that in mind, let's take our questions from the next callers. Who do we have next?
All right, caller, you are now on the air. Please tell us your name, where you're calling from, and your question for our candidates.
My name is Asaf. I'm from Harlem. And my question is, most of the programs that's on WBAI, if you juxtapose it against CBS, NBC, no one can call into NBC or ABC or CBS while they're live and get their question in. But the beauty of your station is that you can call in, but most of the time you cannot call in. They just run off. The second question I would like to ask is, why is it that when somebody sends money in to get DVDs or whatever they're trying to promote the program with, twice I lost money, but I'm not complaining about that. But I would like to give a solution to that. Why don't they have some type of brick and mortar so that one can go pick up their DVDs or items that they may be suggested on WBAI? And that's basically what I submit to you.
Thank you for that question. Next caller, please.
All right, caller, you are on the air. Please tell us your name and where you are calling from and what your question is for our candidates.
Hi, it's Russell up in White Plains. And the candidate who said that hosts and producers are not appreciated and too much focus is on the listeners, I have to disagree completely. I'd like to see BAI have a better call-in function. I mean, it's important to have callers who do stop talking and aren't going to monopolize. But many times listeners are asked to call in, and hosts are perplexed when no calls come in. And I'm telling you, I'm calling 20 times. My aunt and I are the only ones who are so obsessed enough to call all the time. I'm sure everyone else is discouraged. The phones go to the phone tree. It goes to no answer. I mean, it is ridiculous. I know the BAI doesn't really want to take callers. Most of the people don't. But I would like to know if there's any plan. I mean, get a screener like Giovanni. The engineers need screeners. They can't do everything. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that call. We have another caller on the line.
Yes, we do. I love Russell, though. Just going to say that. All right, caller, you are now on the air. Please tell us your name, where you're calling from, and what your question is for our candidates.
Is this my time?
Yes, sir.
Hey, I'm Roy from Connecticut. I'm a BAI body. Okay, I'm just going to make a comment and then you can comment on it and I cut off. I'm just going to say 3 things. WBAI have a problem, and the problem is it's PBS now. It's no longer WBAI. It's cut off from the listeners. We, the old timers that support it non-stop through thick and thin, you can't even have a program that you can call in. Everybody just come and talk down to you. Nobody will have a program. I tell the general manager, have a program, one program per day where they can communicate with the listeners. That's not important. The next thing is that WBAI have a stealing problem, and until it's correct, they will never come out a money problem. And that stealing problem, let me explain it. Okay, I'm a buddy. I pay my fees, and I hear program going on. I spend up to $1,000 by program. It's no big deal for me. Okay, when I buy these things, I don't get them. Okay, my stuff for Garron and thing was running out. I order them from them. I pay up front. Even if they say to pay for shipping and handling, I'll do that. Okay, you get nothing. And Mimi Rosenberg, all these people have their program, I want to buy it. I can't buy no more because I'm not getting it. That part needs to be corrected. You need to get a program where you can keep in touch with the people like Family Radio, and you wanna have the people get the stuff when they hard age and when they pay their money up front, and you have nobody you can talk to, no phone number.
Thank you so much. Wow. Thank you for that perspective. I mean, I feel the passion in your voice, and we're going to have our candidates answer some of these questions that you all are raising. Some of them is just, whoa. So we're going to start with Nick Nicholudis. Nick, we've got some concerns about the very funding model here. People pay for programming and they don't feel like they're getting what they're paying for. What are your thoughts about this? What are your thoughts about, again, this money issue keeps coming up with potential fraud? And any other questions that you want to answer from the past round as well about programming and shaping programming. You have 2 minutes starting now.
Yeah, I think something that I noticed in this last couple of rounds of questions is that you really hear the passion that listeners have for the station, right? And I think that that's such a strength and something that needs to be harnessed in a way that can lead to sustainable funding models. I mean, the passion of the people who just called in, who want to call into shows, I mean, is amazing. That's such an amazing resource to have for a station. All right. And then, kind of going back to this question of programming, right? It's such a vital question because, part of it, evaluating programming, it can't be about money. It can't, for me, it cannot be about money. Because if it's about how much money each show is bringing in, then we're just left with a bunch of shows trying to sell something. And clearly people are upset about that. We've heard a couple callers who are upset about that kind of model. And so we need to think of another way to evaluate shows on some other kind of metric. And I think, again, listening to these callers call in, we need to think about how our shows, what they provide for our listeners, not in monetary values, whether that's independent journalism, as some people have mentioned, discussion programs, call-in programs, news programs, information, and even entertainment, right? Let's not forget WBAI played Arlo Guthrie's Alice's Restaurant for the first time in 1967.
Nick,
right?
I'm going to have to stop you right here. And I thank you so
Okay.
much for your perspective. We're actually going to give the candidates 1 minute to support the closing statements. We're running short on time. So thank you so much. We're going to go now to
Okay.
Michael D.D. White. Michael, you have 1 minute.
Okay, this is a closing statement. Oh my God.
No, it's not a
Okay.
closing statement. It's just a statement about the questions we've heard so far.
Okay, this is not a closing statement.
No,
Sorry.
not yet. No.
So in the 3 years that I've been on the board, we've pulled together to deal with a lot of overdue matters. And that was in the face of multiple attacks, including 1919, October, the shutdown of the station, and then the 2 bylaw referendum attacks. Things that we have done include, by the way, we're interviewing our program director search committee is interviewing candidates to figure out, including the current interim director, to figure out who should get that position on a permanent appointment basis. But one of the things we did do was the general manager's report, which is currently with the interim executive director at Pacifica. But more importantly, the recommendations that we came up with as a board and that the board approved, where we had suggestions for improvement, are currently with the general manager, and he is responding and implementing them.
Thank you, Michael. And again, candidates will have a final word momentarily with the closing statement. So our next candidate is going to be Dean Loren. Dean, 1 minute.
Yes, Dean Loren at gmail.com, Dean Loren blogspot.com. I was a member of Disabled in Action in New York, where we stopped the traffic with our wheelchairs. And I'm Cherokee. So, you know, it's a double whammy when you come talking about openness of the radios. And yeah, there were 4,000 premiums that hadn't been delivered back in October of 2019. Massive, massive problem. I tried to volunteer. Nobody wanted me to help get the premiums out. So again, there are mega problems. And the problem is that the LSB and those representatives on the national board are violating the bylaws. They're not doing the audits. I mean, our Paul Martin got caught with not even sending a breakout sheet for the financial for WBAI on October 2019. So again, I would say we actually need people who know how to do a job at WBAI.
Thank you, Dean Loren. Our next candidate is Rachel Barr. Rachel, you have 1 minute.
So I would just like to say some things. One of the first thing that comes to my mind is I wanted to piggyback on something that Serene said last time she was allowed to speak. Not only are there no shows representing so many of the groups she mentioned, but there was a program called with so-called disabled people on the air, and that was removed from the airwaves. So that's just something I want to point out. And we have not, the listeners have not had a report to the listener in God knows how long. I can't even keep track of that any longer. And if that would occur, then the listeners who chose to listen to it would perhaps get some more information about the financial status and about programs and about all the other things that make any radio station work, whether they're, you know, whatever radio station is. Because most of the listeners in BAI, I heard it, I'll shut up.
All right, our next candidate is Eleanor Elizabeth Foreman. You have 1 minute.
Where's my pen?
Our final statement.
No.
Okay, in addressing some of the things that have been mentioned, Manhattan Neighborhood Network would be great for us to partner with to get a video component to our programs and to address training. But a public service operating agreement, which might have an effect on our programming, that I am not for. However, if they made a specific offer, which they did not do years ago when this was first mentioned, if they made a specific offer, a specific agreement, I would look at to see exactly what it said and listen to everyone's viewpoints on whether it was a bad or a good thing. But in my candidate statement, I say I'm against a PSOA.
Thank you so much. And our next candidate is going to be...
I'm Eleanor Elizabeth Foreman.
Yep, Kaye Williams is the next candidate. Kaye, you're on mute.
Okay. Well, I just want to say people throw around words like collaborate and partnership as if they're interchangeable. And in fact, I think partnership implies some sort of legal relationship. So we need to really know what we're talking about. We need to really listen to each other and get things right. For example, when Serene said that you, Renata, yelled at Errol when he was interrupted by Matthew, you didn't. You yelled at Matthew. So you need to get things correct. We need to really listen and get things corrected, not just jump on bandwagons. And as far as everyone agrees, there should be more listener participation, more call-in time. And I think maybe we do need to reinstitute report to the listener with part of that time being for call-ins. Unfortunately, it may require some training. I mean, we don't have too many Bob Fasses lying around, unfortunately, who really knew how to take calls.
Thank you, Kaye Williams. We're moving to our next candidate, Matthew Reiss. You have 1 minute. Matthew Reiss, are you here? Okay, so we'll move on to the next candidate while Matthew gets his unmute feature sorted out. Ben Garron Kane. Ben Garron Kane, are you here on the line? Okay, so we'll move to our next candidate, Errol Maitland. Errol, you have 1 minute.
Yeah, you can yell at me all you like. I don't mind. I'm used to it. First of all, we have to respect our listeners and we have to believe that we serve their interest. I am a listener to WBAI for a long time. I was drafted into the station because I had some production and radio and television knowledge, and I gladly gave that to the station. Premiums have always been a problem at WBAI, and we need to do something about it. We have to stop being a commercial selling network. Programming has to drive the network. Look at Mimi Rosenberg. Look at a 10-year-old program that Felipe did on the Black Panthers and what it brought in terms of fundraising. People have to love WBAI and listen to WBAI for its content and not for what we are pitching. I yield back my time just in case I had stolen some from before.
Okay, Errol Maitland. Our next candidate is going to be Matthew Reiss. Are you on the line? No. Ben, on the line? Okay, John Hoffman, you're next.
Okay, thank you. I just kind of want to summarize everything that I've heard during today's discussion from the listeners and from the fellow candidates, and I appreciate the time. I think the financial concerns of the station are, everyone's very concerned, and I'm concerned as well. I think good progress has been made in the last couple of years, and I want to make sure that that progress continues. Understanding the listeners and what the listeners are looking for from the station, I think is very important based on the calls that have come in. And that's something that's a big takeaway for me. Bringing the board, the entire board closer together, I think is essential in order to build on progress that's been made and to truly stabilize the station, because a lot of people, the listeners and the people who work at the station are depending upon the board to make sure that it exercises in a responsible way the best interests of the station. And then finally, just overall kind of fundraising ideas, ways to kind of become more independent from dependency on personalities and
You're next, Serene, with 1 minute. Okay, Serene, Katherine Sullivan.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you, Serene.
Okay, I was knocked off the call, stuck in the waiting room, no one responding to that. I'll begin by saying that candidate cards are supposed to be playing on the air. We were told we had a deadline of July something to record those cards. Those cards have been available. None of those cards have been played. This is a mess around the network. There's a serious problem with these elections. Please attend Sundays, that's tomorrow. There'll be progressive candidates from around the country visiting. It's a Zoom call, it's a virtual call. PacificaFightback.org, PacificaFightback.org. Please visit justiceunity.org to learn more about our platform and our plans for WBAI, including anti-racist training for WBAI and for the other stations around the network, and work on the elimination of sexual harassment. Right now, that training only goes to paid staff, which is a minuscule number of people at the stations. The key responsibility for the board at this point, when we're so deep in the hole, is monitoring the budget. They will not approve a budget. They will not ask serious questions. The draft budget has a $300,000 deficit. Every month, we're $25,000 in the hole. You know what they allow on the agenda for this? 16 minutes.
Thank you, Serene. Thank you so much,
Serene.
Okay, so our next candidate is Katherine O'Sullivan. Katherine, you have 1 minute and you're on mute. So take yourself off mute.
Thank you. Sorry
Okay.
about that. The mute thing got
That
me.
mute. Oh, it'll get you.
Yeah. So I'm going to sort of go through a few things that came up in the course of other comments. One, okay, Time Warner changed its name to Spectrum. So Spectrum Time Warner's Manhattan Neighborhood Network. They censored Dee Halleck. I don't know. I would really want a lawyer to take a really close look at any proposed partnership, but they haven't submitted a proposal. Let's see, general manager evaluation, I believe, was done. There is a Haitian show. Now, of course, we could have much more diverse shows. I'd like to see more diversity. I think the LSB report was taken care of by Sean, and candidates' cards are being played, I think. But I've got one last thing to say, and that is that, yes, not everyone's on a computer or a smartphone. The radio is still essential to a lot of people. I like the radio. I don't actually listen to stuff on computers and phones.
Thank you, Katherine. Oh,
I like the radio.
And our last person that we'll be hearing from is going to be Jim Dingman. Jim, are you here?
Yeah.
Okay. 1 minute, Jim.
Okay. First of all the stations have to take seriously these kind of criticisms. The fact that people are raising questions about the scheduling and all that. That's an important issue. That can be easily settled by having a report to the listeners that the PD talks about this. But the other question that I have in terms of the interaction with the listener base is I think that all the Pacific stations should purchase 2 or 3 large Zoom accounts, which can give the possibility of getting 300 people. And all the shows should be required every quarter to have a Zoom meeting with their listeners. And let's just see what the interaction is, because the more interaction, the better, the more likelihood that people will donate. We also need to create at least 5 additional channels at BAI that include a platform for new shows, totally new shows. And frankly, I think we should work with music shows and create new music shows and work with the people in the network who have music shows that really are good. There's really a lot of people that do good stuff.
Thank you, Jim. So you're tuned in to 99.5 WBAI New York. This is listener-sponsored, non-commercial radio streaming at WBAI.org. We have 27 listener candidates running for 9 seats on the local station board. 27 listener candidates, 13 have come. They said they want to be a part of this process, and they've spoken. So now we're going to wrap this up. And the wrap up is going to be very short. 30 seconds per candidate. And the beautiful thing is that this is just a taste, and you could go to elections.pacifica.org to get the detailed statements. So we're going to start with our first candidate. 30 seconds you have. Michael D. White, starting now.
Yes, thank you. Michael D. White, I'm running as an Indy candidate on the Indy slate. Please vote for me. Please vote for all of the Indy candidates on the slate. And I think you can hear my cart running on WBAI with the other WBAI candidates. How do we build up our reputation? People were talking about fraud and everything. Well, so much negativity is not going to help building up our reputation. We need people who can build on the positive. That's what we've been doing for the past 3 years.
All right, our next candidate, thank you, Michael D. White, is Dean Loren. Dean, 30 seconds.
Dean Loren, that's Dean like in a college, Loren like Sophia, Loren @gmail.com. You can also get me at deanlorenblog.com. Hey, you can even call me at 718-277-1367. I always used to put my phone number out. And hey, listen, it's been great. A lot of problems, a lot of solutions, and I would say kudos to everybody that participated in today's show. Thank you so much. Dean Loren for WBAI listener candidate.
Thank you, Dean Loren. Our next candidate with her closing statement is Rachel Barr.
Yes, thank you for tuning into this listener forum. I'm Rachel Barr. I'm running with the Justice and Unity slate. Please visit our website and please vote for the entire slate. And we will work to serve the listeners. That's what we were elected to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel Barr. Our next candidate is Eleanor Elizabeth Foreman with 30 seconds of a closing statement.
I'm Eleanor Elizabeth Foreman. I'm unaffiliated with any slate. I'm a former WBAI staff member.
Going to get.
My email, if you have any questions for me, is EEF, as in Eleanor Elizabeth Foreman, www@yahoo.com. That's EEF www@yahoo.com. My phone number is 212-695-7286. Eleanor
Thank you.
Elizabeth Foreman.
Thank you. And our next candidate is Kaye Williams with 30 seconds.
Okay, well, my name is Kaye Williams. I'm proud to be an indie slate candidate. We've all gone through all the problems that exist at BAI, and it seems to me in the most recent history, it was the indie slate people that actually started solving some of these problems. And I think that that's important. I don't fault anyone for wearing more than one hat. I've worn more than one hat on many occasions, but we have to look at which candidates actually make WBAI their #1 priority.
All right, priorities, WBAI. And our next candidate is priority. He's Matthew Reiss. Matthew, you have 30 seconds. We just need to get you to unmute. All right, Matthew Reiss. Okay, so while he gets sorted out, we're gonna move to our next candidate, which is Garron Kane. Ben, are you here? Okay, we're gonna move on to.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. You've got 30 seconds.
Hey, sorry. Yeah, we've seen dark times, and I think sometimes when the ship has trouble, we look to these internal divisions, and really what we need is members. We need members, and we need new shows. And as a board member, I won't even stop so far as suggesting new shows. I'm sure if you talk to the interim program director, she'd tell you that I've sent her emails regarding ideas for shows that I think would bring members to the station. So that's what I want to do. I want to grow our membership. I want to make WBAI strong again. Thanks for hosting this debate. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Garron Kane. We'll move on to Errol Maitland with your 30-second statement.
Well, WBAI has been a valued institution in our community. We need to keep it going. Pacifica has been valuable to the country and the world, and we need to keep it going. Pacifica and WBAI is in serious trouble financially, and also we're having some problem intellectually, which we need to remedy and we need to cure. And as a family, we have disagreements, but hopefully we will all pull together and work it out. Peace,
Thanks.
love, and time.
Thank you so much, Errol Maitland. Our next candidate with his closing statement is John Hoffman.
Okay, I want to thank the listeners and my fellow candidates and Renata. I know this is really difficult to pull off, and I appreciate it. My email address, if you want to reach out to me directly, is bxbkqu@gmail.com. I would appreciate your vote. I'm running on the Indie Slate. The Indie Slate would appreciate your votes as well. And thank you, everyone.
Thank you, John Hoffman. Up next is Serene Roberts with her 30-second closing statement. Serene.
Okay, Justice, can you hear me?
Yep.
Can I be heard?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. JusticeUnity.org, JusticeUnity.org. We are a collective of anti-racist, anti-imperialist, anti-war people who have worked in one capacity or another, most of it unpaid, for WBAI for a long time. There are people who have been listeners for a long time. We want to make a change. In the past 2 years, Pacifica has spent more than $200,000 of our donations on a fight over the role of local station boards and whether our national boards will be appointed people, friends of friends. But people on our LSBs
Thank you so much, Serene.
job.
Thank you. We'll move on now to Katherine O'Sullivan. 30 seconds. You've got Katherine O'Sullivan.
Okay, yes, vote for me, Katherine O'Sullivan. I believe in independent, listener-supported WBAI, voice for the diverse community that we are. Vote for me and all the other indie candidates, Kaye Williams, Scotty Battle, Priscilla, Philip DePaulo, James Dingman, Don Hoffman, Matthew Reiss, and Michael White. Thank you very much, listeners, for tuning in. I hope you'll vote for me, Katherine O'Sullivan.
Jim Dingman, you're next. Jim?
Yeah. Thank you, Renata, for doing this. People should vote for myself and all the people in the Indy caucus. The main thing I want to say is we have to get the Corporation for Public Broadcasting money back into the mix. We lost about $1 million a year throughout the whole system for at least 4 or 5 years. And so that has to be altered and changed, and we've got to work. And I pledge that I will work like the Dickens. I already have started it to get that money back. Thank you.
Nicholudis.
Thanks, everyone. Nicholudis, I'm running as a red wave candidate with my fellow candidate, Dylan Saba, and as a member of the Democratic Socialists of America here in New York. I see WBAI as a beacon to move to New York towards a more equitable and sustainable future through a community of listeners and supporters. And we can do this by creating programs that support the views of New Yorkers, to promote a political vision for the city and use the station to advance not just progressive ideas, but the political goals necessary in this time of precarity.
Thank you, Nick. Matthew Reiss, are you here?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Yep, 30 seconds.
Well, the attorney William Kunstler once narrated a couple in Germany awakened by the so-called the boots at the door, the brown shirts, the Gestapo, and one says to the other, why didn't we do something while we still could? And I believe we still can clean things up and still question authority here. However, we got to keep this place alive, and we got to cooperate with each other to do so. And thank you for carrying this out.
That wraps up our program. Thank you for tuning in to WBAI's Listener Candidate Forum for the 2021 delegate election. Please remember to vote before October 15th, 2021. Request your ballots, find detailed statements, do all of that at elections.pacifica.org. Have a beautiful, beautiful evening. And thank you to all the candidates and listeners who participated. Peace. Peace.
Thank you, Renata. Thanks, Giovanni.
Hi, this is Eric Anderson.
This is Goldie Perez.
You're tuned to WBAI.
What's up, ladies and gentlemen? This is LL
Thank you,
Cool J.
Renata.
This is Dave Marsh.